May 2014 in Arizona greeted us with unusual morning heat. At 18 Mountain View Street in suburban Phoenix, sunlight was already streaming into my kitchen. As usual, I stood with my warm coffee, gazing at the photograph on the table. It captured 2-month-old Tommy, my son Daniel, and his wife Rebecca, their faces glowing with smiles that seemed to overflow with hope for the future. Since losing my husband George 3 years ago, this house had felt a bit empty. But now, thanks to my son's family and little Tommy, life was returning. My 38 years of teaching experience was proving unexpectedly valuable, especially the lessons learned from working with students with disabilities, which became a precious asset in supporting these new parents. Today was special, Tommy's regular checkup. I'd been carefully managing my retirement savings for medical expenses, but lately, I'd grown worried. More and more tests weren't covered by insurance. Morning, Mom. Up early as usual. Turning to the voice behind me, I saw Daniel standing there. As the founding CTO of Phoenix Tech Solutions, a rising IT startup in Phoenix, he cut a sharp figure in his perfectly pressed navy suit, latest iPhone in hand. The slight wrinkles on his forehead seemed to tell of recent work pressures. I'd heard rumors that the company wasn't doing well. But my son kept up his brave face, typical of his perfectionist nature that feared admitting failure. Is Tommy still sleeping? No, Rebecca's dressing him. Seems she's taking her time choosing the perfect outfit for today's Instagram post. I couldn't help but sigh at those words. Rebecca, raised in wealth, couldn't lower her living standards even after marriage. Dreaming of becoming a mommy influencer, her follower count was steadily growing, along with the expenses of keeping up appearances. We're ready. Tommy looks absolutely angelic today. Rebecca descended the stairs, every inch the perfect celebrity mom in her Ralph Lauren dress, Hermes scarf, and Jimmy Choo flats. Tommy was dressed in a pale blue baby Dior romper. He looks adorable, I said, though my eyes were drawn to where the price tags had been removed. These expenses surely couldn't be covered by Daniel's salary alone. Was this why he'd been working such late hours lately? In the car heading to Mayo Clinic, I kept glancing at the photo. The family's happy smiles. Yet somehow, anxiety churned in my gut. I couldn't shake what I'd heard from Daniel's former colleague last week, rumors about a major bug in Phoenix Tech Solutions' flagship product, with key clients canceling contracts left and right. At the hospital, the pediatric floor was already bustling with parents and children. After checking in, I was preparing Tommy's milk in the waiting room when he suddenly started crying differently than usual. In that moment, a flash of worry shot through my heart. Entering Dr. Thompson's examination room, the atmosphere felt heavier than ever. The veteran pediatrician's expression was more serious than I'd ever seen. "Mrs. Wilson, we need to talk." Those words began an explanation of test results that would change our world forever. Severe audiovisual impairment. Due to congenital CMV infection, Tommy has serious disabilities affecting both his hearing and vision. The doctor's words echoed like distant thunder. Over $150,000 in annual treatment costs. experimental treatments not covered by insurance. 24-hour care. Each word sank like lead into our hearts. This treatment is experimental, but if we start early, there's potential for improvement. However, as Dr. Thompson continued, I watched the color drain from Daniel's face. Rebecca clutched her smartphone with trembling hands, staring at the screen. And I held Tommy's tiny hand, repeating, "We'll manage somehow," like a mantra. From that day, visible changes began in our family. First, Rebecca's social media updates suddenly stopped. The daily parenting diary and family photos that she had religiously posted vanished. Daniel's return time grew later each day, sometimes stretching to 2 or 3 a.m. I couldn't even find words to speak to my son when he came home looking utterly exhausted. Conversations between the couple dwindled, and Tommy's care gradually fell to me. Hospital bills piled up, and past due notices started arriving. The family atmosphere deteriorated rapidly, with the once bright laughter now existing only in memory. Then, one rainy night, I accidentally discovered documents in Daniel's home office. Internal documents showing the company's management crisis, high-interest personal loan certificates, and overdue medical bill notices. Everything seemed ready to collapse like a house of cards. Outside, an Arizona monsoon storm raged, as if prophesying the trials ahead. By July, Arizona was experiencing even more severe heat than usual. Daytime temperatures frequently exceeded 115 degrees, with mirages rising from the asphalt. In our living room, Tommy napped on a special cooling mat. Over the past 2 weeks, the couple's situation had worsened. Daniel still couldn't tell me he'd lost his job at the company. But a mother's intuition told me something had been pushed beyond the point of no return. Rebecca was unrecognizable from her former glamorous self. Her designer dresses had been replaced with second-hand clothes, her once perfect hairstyle now disheveled. Her social media accounts remained abandoned. I'd heard her relationship with her parents had ended after they refused her request for a loan. "Mom," Daniel said that afternoon. "Tomorrow, we'll take care of Tommy. You should take a break." There was something hollow in his voice, but I felt a faint hope at this rare offer. "Thank you, Daniel. But I'm fine." "Please, Mom," his voice trembling. "Let us take care of him tomorrow." That night, I went to bed with an uneasy feeling. Outside, the desert wind made ominous sounds. The next day, Daniel and Rebecca left with Tommy. Rebecca hid her face behind large sunglasses, barely speaking. Daniel seemed distracted. "Are you feeling unwell?" I asked. "I'm fine. Just tired," Rebecca answered softly. I hugged Tommy then. Tighter and longer than usual, as if sensing it might be the last time. "We'll be back," were the last words I heard from my son. 2 a.m. On a gravel road off Route 66. An SUV stopped in the desolate desert, illuminated only by moonlight. In this barren land dotted with cacti and rocks, even in summer, the night desert was cold, with wind whipping up sand. Is this really our only option? Rebecca's trembling voice echoed in the car. We have no choice. Daniel's voice was cold, emotions suppressed. We can't keep paying for the treatments. The company's finished. Bankruptcy is inevitable. But... Rebecca sobbed, staring at the car seat in the back. Let's get rid of this burden. Daniel's words disappeared into the night wind. They abandoned the sleeping Tommy, car seat and all, in the desert. A tiny life left on the parched earth. In the Arizona desert in July, where daytime temperatures approach 120 degrees. The SUV's engine noise kicked up gravel, vanishing into the darkness. All that remained was the cry of a baby who had awakened, gradually swallowed by the vast silence of the desert. The next morning, I started making calls early. Both Daniel and Rebecca's cell phones gave the same message: the phone is either turned off or outside the service area. Driven by anxiety, I called the police. The search began several hours later. Navajo police officer John Begay was the first to arrive at the scene. He instinctively insisted on searching the desert areas. There are old stories in this region, John spoke quietly. Places of spiritual trial. Where lost souls make their final choices. Using social media location data, they traced Daniel and Rebecca's car route. A volunteer search party of young Navajo people organized themselves, drawing on their intimate knowledge of the desert terrain. Please wait here. We will find Tommy. The search continued under the scorching sun. It was a race against time. Everyone carried the same worry: how long could an infant survive in the July Arizona desert? Miraculously, 12 hours after being abandoned, Tommy was found alive, despite severe dehydration. He was immediately airlifted to emergency care. His small life's resilience would later become known as the Desert Miracle. But Daniel and Rebecca were nowhere to be found. Later investigation would reveal their escape to Mexico. And more facts would come to light. Embezzlement at the company. Hidden massive debts. Complete deletion of social media accounts. Everything had been planned. That night, in the ICU, I held Tommy's tiny hand as he slept. The steady rhythm of the monitors testified to his life force. Grandma will protect you, no matter what. My resolve crystallized in that moment. The court appointed me as temporary guardian. Media crews camped outside the hospital, reporting on the story daily. Yet amid the chaos, a strange peace settled in my heart. This was the beginning of a new life. No matter how difficult the path ahead might be. By winter, our home in suburban Phoenix had transformed completely. The barrier-free interior now featured sensory stimulation equipment recommended by specialists, and tactile picture books hung on the walls. These renovations were made possible by unexpected circles of support. 5 months after the incident, the Navajo community that had found Tommy in the desert continued to support us. Officer John Begay, in particular, visited every weekend to perform traditional healing ceremonies. This child has a special soul, John would say as ceremonial smoke rose. Those who survive the desert's trial are given the power of creation. This is our ancient teaching. Those words would eventually prove true. The first change was Tommy's response to vibrations. Though he struggled with normal sounds, he showed remarkable sensitivity to low-frequency vibrations. This is an unusual case. The Mayo Clinic specialist explained while reviewing test results. His brain might be processing certain vibrations in a unique way. The fundraising efforts by my former colleagues spread beyond expectations. Students I'd taught over my 38-year teaching career returned as supporters. Among them was a former visually impaired student I had taught. Mrs. Wilson's teaching was special. He said, signing along with his words. Now it's our turn to give back. Support circles on social media grew rapidly. Ironically, the social media influence Rebecca had once sought was now realized in the form of support for Tommy. We also began collaborating with Desert Bloom, a local support group for children with disabilities. They provided cutting-edge assistance technology and experienced therapists. I returned to teaching part-time at a special needs school. This wasn't just for income, it was also to gain new knowledge for Tommy's sake. Learning sign language and communication methods became our daily routine. Though some days brought tears of frustration, Tommy's small progress always renewed my hope. Then, around his second birthday, an unexpected talent began to emerge. It happened on a rainy day. Tommy started swaying to the rhythm of raindrops hitting the window. He was responding with his whole body to sounds he shouldn't normally be able to hear. This might be musical talent. Music therapist Sarah Martinez pointed out. The ability to feel music through vibrations. It's a special gift. Experimental treatments were also showing gradual results. Partial hearing recovery. Introduction of new hearing aid technology. Utilization of visual assistance devices. Each step was small, but we were definitely moving forward. By age 3, Tommy had discovered his own method of expression using a tablet. He created vibration patterns that converted into music. This talent further blossomed when he encountered traditional Navajo music. Rhythm is the heartbeat of the earth. John explained while drumming. Tommy feels that heartbeat in his own special way. His adaptation to special needs school went smoothly. Teachers utilized Tommy's unique musical expression as a means of communication. By age 5, Tommy began showing remarkable talent in electronic music. His unique compositions, combining vibrations and sound, gradually gained attention. His music videos on YouTube received unexpected responses. Messages poured in from families with disabled children, saying they found hope in his work. At local art festivals, audiences gave standing ovations to Tommy's performances. His way of feeling sound through vibrations and expressing it as music touched many hearts. Local news dubbed him the Miracle Boy of Arizona, and disability support groups took notice. Medical professionals showed interest in his work as a new possibility for music therapy. Sometimes I look back at photographs. The doctor's stern expression that day in the examination room. My son and his wife who ran away. the baby abandoned in the desert. All these memories now seem to shine in a different light. Perhaps the trials opened a door to new possibilities. Tommy's music was like a prayer rising from the depths of his soul. It taught us that life holds unexpected miracles. Spring 2024. In the Phoenix Community Center Hall, soft electronic music flows. 10-year-old Tommy sits before his custom musical equipment, teaching 20 children with disabilities how to express themselves through vibrations. His music now attracts national attention. His vibration therapy playlist on Spotify is being used in medical facilities. Nominated for multiple music awards, his innovative expression method is credited with opening new horizons in music therapy. I'm 75 now. Though my hair has whitened, my advocacy work for children with disabilities has become even more active. I've had increasing opportunities to speak at conferences nationwide as a community leader. That day's class maintained its usual warm atmosphere. Tommy was creating music with the children using his specially developed tactile electronic instruments. Then it happened suddenly. Two shadows appeared in the classroom doorway. At first, I didn't recognize them. A thin man in a cheap polo shirt and a tired-looking middle-aged woman. They stood there with trembling hands, holding a piece of paper. But when the man spoke, my blood froze. Mom. Tommy. My son's voice, after 10 years. It was Daniel. The classroom atmosphere instantly turned to ice. The music stopped, and all eyes focused on the doorway. Tommy, as if sensing the situation with his sharp intuition, slowly raised his head. Rebecca had completely lost her former glamour. Her luxury-branded outfits were replaced with worn jeans and a t-shirt, her unkempt hair showing streaks of gray. We want to come back to the family. Daniel's voice trembled. In his hands was a letter that read, "Please forgive us," the ink smeared with tears. The truth gradually emerged. 10 years in Mexico. Failed businesses. Heavy debts. And poverty. They had returned after learning of Tommy's musical success in the news, harboring financial expectations. Rebecca confessed to receiving rehabilitation for social media addiction. Her obsession with projecting a perfect family image had driven her to the edge. And then came the most crucial moment. Tommy's response. When he saw his parents, he stood still for a moment. Then, slowly, he began to sign. "Why did you come back?" I voiced his signs, but Tommy didn't wait for an answer. He returned to his instruments. And then he began to play. It was music unlike anything anyone had ever heard. Starting with low vibrations like desert winds, building into a whirlwind of sound. Deep sadness, anger, and something else. Not forgiveness, but not hatred either. Complex emotions filled the room through his music. By the time the performance ended, everyone in the room was in tears. The Wilsons, the children and their families, and me. Tommy signed again. I already have a family. But I would like to hear your music too. These words seemed both like absolution across 10 years and the beginning of a new trial. However, the events of that day were far from over. Daniel and Rebecca's sudden reappearance would trigger new legal issues. The battle between their claim for parental rights and our protection of Tommy's best interests was just beginning. As we left the classroom, I held Tommy's hand. His palms seemed to still hold the vibrations from his instruments. It felt like the pulse of a new chapter beginning. In the Arizona State Courthouse, amid the hum of air conditioning, the custody hearing for Tommy continued. The Wilsons argued about their 10 years of life in Mexico and efforts at rehabilitation. Their lawyer repeatedly claimed biological parents have the right to raise their child. But their argument had a fatal flaw. Defendant Daniel Wilson, what were you thinking when you abandoned Tommy in the desert? At the prosecutor's sharp question, Daniel lowered his head. His voice trembled. I was too obsessed with perfection. I thought a child with disabilities would ruin the perfect life I envisioned. Officer John Begay took the witness stand. He recounted the circumstances of finding Tommy 10 years ago, his words measured but weighted with gravity. The desert temperature was 118 degrees. Well beyond an infant's survival limit. Yet strangely, around Tommy, the temperature was slightly lower. As if the desert spirits were protecting him. Community representatives testified next. Many people who had supported Tommy's growth testified about his talent and our family bonds. Medical professionals submitted 10 years of treatment records. Continuous treatment, with all costs covered by me and the community. Meanwhile, there had never been any support from the Wilsons. But the turning point in this trial came from Tommy's unique testimony. Your Honor, I addressed the judge. Would you allow Tommy to testify through music? After considering this unusual request, the judge nodded. Electronic instruments were brought into the courtroom. Tommy transformed 10 years of emotions into music. The first sounds expressed the scorching desert. Low, heavy vibrations. A faint baby's cry mixed in. The sounds gradually changed to express the relief of being rescued by the Navajo people, then the beginning of his new life with me. Joy, pain, hope, and love. As the music enveloped the courtroom, everyone held their breath. Tears streamed down the Wilsons' cheeks. After the performance, Tommy signed. I interpreted. I love my current family. But I want to know about you too. At that moment, the Wilsons stood up. We withdraw. Daniel's voice echoed in the courtroom. We withdraw our custody claim. Rebecca stood too, continuing with a trembling voice. We were wrong. We won't destroy Tommy's life again. The courtroom fell into deep silence. The judge closed his eyes in thought before delivering the verdict. Custody will remain with Martha Wilson. However, the Wilsons are granted graduated visitation rights. Under social worker supervision, regular visits will be allowed to work toward relationship restoration. Tommy gave a small nod at these words. 1 month after the verdict. A special dinner was held at our house in suburban Phoenix. The Wilsons, John Begay, Sarah the music therapist, and many community members gathered. At the center of the table sat the old family photograph. Next to it, a new photo showed the smiles of an even larger family. Tommy performed a special piece. This time, the tones were bright with hope. The music seemed to express the shape of our new family. "This is our new beginning," I whispered, holding Tommy's shoulders. Outside, the Arizona sunset painted the desert red. The place of our trial had become the stage for our new story. "Grandma," Tommy signed. "Music has the power to heal souls. The Navajo people taught me that." I nodded, reflecting on these 10 years. Sometimes trials bring unexpected gifts. Tommy's talent, community bonds, and now, this new form of family. "Let's create a new song." Everyone smiled at Tommy's signing. It was more than the restoration the judge spoke of. We were beginning to weave a new family story together. The tiny life abandoned in the desert now creates music that changes many lives. Those melodies of compassion, healing wounded souls and pointing toward new hope, echo across the Arizona landscape.